Alright, thanks for being flexible as I get up to turn the camera on and off. Okay, so now that we have gone through what the lesson is going to look like, you've already been working on covering all the other components, the modeling and all of that. We've written our exemplar, and the next step for you will be the academic monitoring. That just looks a little different than what you have been doing, because we both recognize that what you've been doing is a form of academic monitoring. We're just going to try the moving around the room, the clipboard, and having a pathway. So what I usually recommend is after you've gone through your model, your explicit instructions, then you will release them for their independent practice. Once you release them for their independent practice, you're going to name your first lap and what you're going to be looking for. So in this case, can you tell me what you think that the first thing you might be looking for would be?
Their conclusion. That's what they're working on. And so I would ask them to go ahead and begin writing their conclusion.
Great. Can you get a little, because you could do more than one lap, and that's actually usually what I recommend if you can. If you were to get a little bit more granular as the students are starting their task, what might you want to see right out of the gate? Like they've just started the race. What do you want to see right out of the gate?
I want them to rename what it is that we're talking about in the conclusion. You're going to sum it up by naming what it is that you just spent this time talking about. So the first thing I'm going to be looking for is, what did you write about?
Okay.
So we're writing about being fit, so I better see being fit.
Okay. You better see being fit.
I better see being fit.
What about as you take it down even another notch?
Okay.
What do you want to see, like at the very, like in terms of more of like the conventions?
Capital letter.
Okay. So
capital letter and spaces.
Okay. So those are all lap ideas.
Okay.
And you are such a great teacher that you'll know like the flow, and I'm confident that you'll figure out which one you want to come first.
Okay.
I was just more or less just pointing out how we can get really granular with those laps.
And I like the idea of looking for the capital letter, because I think, so I would say, okay, I'm going to start my first lap. Do I say my expectation is, or?
Yeah, so you will have already gone over those expectations and modeled. So then you would, I tend to release with like a time, so I would say, okay, I want you to head back to your seats and get started in 5, 4, and you would be counting down. Once they're in their seats, and you can see that everyone's settled in and starting to work, you would say, okay, Miss Jones is going to start walking around. What I'm looking for first is that your first letter of your first word in your sentence has a capital letter.
Oh,
and so then you're going to be walking around, and you are going to go to your early finishers first. Those students you know are going to have it. You can go ahead and by the time my students were done, and when I model this for other teachers, they usually have a couple of checks on their paper because it was for the different phases. I always felt I had a better grip on their work if I could come around and do those laps and check them off as they went.
Okay.
So they might have a check next to that first word, the first letter being capitalized. And if they don't, then our school-wide codes check circle if they still need to work on it. And X if they're really far off and they kind of need to go back to, the square one, essentially.
So if I go around and I see someone that doesn't have it, I'm going to put an X and I'm going to provide that feedback. Oh, how do we start a sentence? What does that start with?
Exactly. That's perfect feedback. You want your feedback to be very bite-sized, and it's explicit in terms of it's pointing them in the right direction. It's vague in terms of you don't want to give them the answer. You want to just kind of turn them and point them in the right direction.
Okay.
And so then you would continue your pathway. And I know we've talked before about that pathway when we first introduced this as a school.
Yes.
And so I'm not going to go into too much detail with that. I think you have a pretty good understanding of that. But you would continue that pathway and then circle back to those students until you have everyone that has a check. And I know just from being in your classroom so much that you have really great supports in place for the students who needed that scaffolding. And so I think that as you're making your way to those students, just making sure that they're using those supports and that you're just helping them to access what the rest of the class is accessing,
Okay.
but not lowering your expectations for them. So they still, you want them to still perform in that productive struggle range too, whatever that is for them.
Exactly.
That might look a little bit
I like the
different.
way you said that, the productive struggle for them.
Yes.
I like that very
Yes,
much.
I do think that's important. And so once you've provided manageable feedback and you feel that the students are on the right track, you can record it on either paper with your clipboard. That's what a lot of teachers do. We do have some teachers that use an iPad with their, I never know if it's a stylus or a stylus. I think it's a stylus.
I'll just
But
poke around with a
I
clipboard.
personally like clipboards, and then
Uh-huh.
I put it into my like running standards document
Right.
here, or I did when I was teaching. Yeah. So, in terms, does that feel comfortable for you as your
Yes,
next action step?
I love that. I
Okay.
love that.
So next time we meet, we will discuss how that went for you. We'll look at how your conclusions came out, just so that we can continue to monitor those students that have those gaps and those higher needs.
Okay.
Would it be possible for me to come in tomorrow when you're teaching? You're doing this one tomorrow, right?
Yeah, I'd love for you to come in.
Well, great. I would love to come back in.
Okay.
So if I could come in tomorrow while you're teaching this, just to see the monitoring in action.
Okay.
And I'm assuming that you'll be great, and so no in the moment feedback will occur. But if you do need in the moment feedback, I can provide that for you, and I would also be happy to model it for you in person if
I
you'd
would
like.
love. I want to try, but then if you see I'm floundering, please jump in.
Okay, absolutely.
And
I
do
don't
it.
anticipate you
Yes,
floundering because I never see you flounder, but I will definitely come in and just take some notes for some feedback for you.
Okay.
And
good.
then if we come back together for observation feedback and you would like me to come back in and model or come back in and provide in the moment feedback, then I would be happy to do that.
Okay.
Okay?
That would be great. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I'm gonna stop this because
Okay.
I think we're good on that, and we'll
Great.
wrap up. And
Did you need me